Have you noticed how many stories today feel the same? Same character arcs, same hero's journey, same emotional feel. Many narratives have fallen into a copy and paste approach to storytelling. As a result, we often lose interest and our attention shifts to find something energized. But how is it that some stories can last thousands of years and still feel alive? These are the great archetypal stories, ones that have transcended time and are born anew with each telling. We hear a lot about using archetypes in writing and filmmaking, but most of the time what's being called an archetype is really just a formula, a checklist to copy what's worked before. The result? Stories feel safe, predictable, and strangely lifeless. That's the opposite of what Carl Jung meant by archetypes. For Jung, archetypes were not templates. They are living, creative forces that rise up from beyond the ego, full of energy, mystery, and spontaneity. They can't be exhausted or turned into a neat diagram. They surprise us, transform us, and sometimes even frighten us. If you go online and search the term archetype today, or ask AI to summarize the concept, you usually get a very specific kind of answer, often finding a list of character archetypes. You'll see things like the hero, the trickster, the wise old man, the crone, and the shadow. They're often presented almost like story templates, fixed roles you can plug into a novel, a movie, or any game. In fact, you may find many sources saying there are a set number of archetypes that require our attention. Sometimes 3 basic archetypes, other times 7 archetypes a writer must live by, or even 12 archetypes you may find in a novel or a story. Although the structure has value and offers insight, there is a danger that we are beginning to limit or concretize the infinite nature of the archetypal material. Now, it's true that Carl Jung, who popularized the term, wrote a lot about these figures, but when you read Jung, you notice something crucial. He almost never treats these as final or rigid types. Instead, he circumambulates them. He circles around them from many angles. He uses a comparative approach from many disciplines in areas of studies such as anthropology, myth, dreams, religious symbols, alchemy, fairy tales, and folklore. He does this because for him, there are endless expressions of an archetype, and he's trying to get as close as possible to the essence, knowing full well he can never capture it completely. So how did Jung actually define archetypes? Jung used the word archetype to describe universal inherited patterns in the collective unconscious that shape how humans imagine, feel, and behave. An archetype is pre-existing, a kind of deep invisible pattern or potential that's already there in the psyche, but it only takes on a specific shape or image within a particular culture, story, or personal life context. Jung thought these patterns are inherited possibilities of experience. They're not images themselves, but they give rise to images. That's why he draws a sharp line between the archetypes as such, the underlying pre-existent pattern in the psyche, which we never encounter directly, and the archetypal images, the concrete symbols and stories and the figures through which a pattern shows itself. Most modern explanations blur this difference. They treat archetypes as if they were fixed character types or stock roles, almost plug-and-play components in a story formula. They're not entirely off base. Stories really do feature recurring archetypal characters and arcs, but they miss the deeper, more fluid nature of the archetype itself and its power. When an archetype is activated and finds a fitting image, it can generate tremendous psychic energy, drawing its audience to its field so strongly that we feel gripped, moved, and utterly captivated. For Jung, archetypes are alive with meaning. They're dynamic and numinous, and it's only through their symbolic expressions in dreams, fantasies, religions, myth, and art, or emotional experiences that we can begin to infer their nature. A key feature is that our unconscious is often creative and can be spontaneous. It does not follow a logical construct. So while it's incredibly important to recognize that stories have archetypal characters and arcs, there is also a danger. If we treat archetypes too fixed, too neatly labeled, they become lifeless. They turn into flat concepts, checklists, or cliches. It's vital to remember, we don't create archetypes, they create us. We are already shaped by these deep patterns long before we ever start using them in storytelling or analysis. When we first encounter an archetype, we don't know it as an idea. We don't feel it as a clean definition. We feel it. as awe, as fear, as fascination, as a sense that something larger is moving through our lives. Many great writers have often said the story comes from another place, and one key point, they often trust the process. Let the psyche speak its wisdom in a natural voice, through its images and symbols. The story does not come from the author, but through him or her. To paraphrase Jung, art is an innate drive that takes hold of a person and turns them into its instrument. The artist is not simply an individual with free will pursuing personal goals, but someone who allows art to fulfill its own purpose through them. The moment we start to believe we pinned down an archetype, named it, or mapped it, we no longer are living in conversation with it. We step out of dialogue with the mystery of life and into an echo chamber of our own making. The way out isn't another formula. It's to let go of formulas and let your imagination play like a child again, to wander and to wonder, to follow the images you don't fully understand, much like traveling into the beyond of the great fairy tales. It's those who make genuine offerings to the mysterious, to the unconscious, who return bearing gifts. Thanks for watching, and please help support the channel by subscribing or providing a like. And I'd love to hear your comments. What stories have stuck with you in your lives? Speak to you on the most deepest level, in stories that seem so universal, but seem like they were written just for you. As always, stay curious and treasure the fleeting moments.